Welcome everybody to Current Events. We're so glad that you've joined us today because we have some very, very interesting topics to discuss. Topics that relate to all of you and me in the day that we're living right now. So the first one is the coronavirus that's looks like it's spreading around the world. It's in about 26 countries now, and I believe that it's airborne.
They have actually found out that it's airborne. So some terrible things have kind of come out of China. Accounts of people's doors being welded,
yes.
With the government trying to keep them inside. And it obviously also finding out that it's airborne has made things difficult because, for instance, a couple of people were tested positive for it on a cruise ship.
Yes.
And then they kept everybody confined on the cruise ship. And now because it's airborne through the vents, hundreds of people have now contracted it. And the Israeli government actually this past week sent an Israeli delegation. They've gone to kind of extract their Israeli citizens. And the people that have tested positive are getting sent to a specific hospital in Japan. And the others are going to be kept quarantined. But it really is massive. I mean, over 70,000 people at least have been infected with it. And I mean, I think those numbers could be conservative. I don't think they're being...
They are definitely conservative. And I don't think that... we know the truth, the real truth about actually what's going on, because everything in China is sealed up, and that's just the normal thing that happens around everything that's going on in China.
Well, you must remember that China being a communist country, if you remember Chernobyl and what happened in Chernobyl, it was also dealt with in a very hush-hush way. Things were not handled properly, and many people suffered and died as a result of it.
Yes.
And this was another country under communist rule, which I think is something that we need to pay very careful attention to. Many of you know that I did the Code Breakers on socialism, the rise in what they are terming democratic socialism.
Yes.
But I've heard a lot of accounts of cases and things going on there in China. And it is difficult on the internet to be sure if what you're seeing is the truth or is something being hyped. But one thing we know for sure is that if you look at the numbers where they're saying, 900 and something or 1,000 people have died, then why is everybody over there being on lockdown? I've seen video footage of them fogging in the streets, people being locked in their apartments for 1,000 deaths. There's been around 40,000 deaths this year just from the regular flu. So for 1,000 deaths, why is there this? And this is what's become questionable. And I listen to a lot of different news reporters, specifically Glenn Beck's done some very good coverage of it. And I believe he did a special on it as well. So looking at that, you can tell and you can see.
We aren't in lockdown for the flu virus. So why are these people in lockdown if it's just like the flu virus?
Now, the other thing is that the doctor who discovered it is now dead.
Yes.
That doctor discovered it. He said something about it, and he has now died.
No, he thought it was something to do with the SARS virus.
Well, there is a similarity.
Yeah.
The reason that they're calling it the coronavirus is because the virus under a microscope looks like a crown.
It's weird.
Dad had that vision of two crowns. Sorry, that just came to me.
I saw that.
Maybe we keep that in the back of our minds, everybody.
Yeah.
My dad did have a vision of the two crowns. He had my husband draw it. But anyway, the coronavirus, they're coming up with another name for it now.
There's a couple of different variations that are going on. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, whatever, we don't know what's going on. I think that much we know, but we do know that it's a human tragedy.
Yes.
What's happened is a human tragedy. And this past week, something that I saw very beautiful coming out of Israel is that thousands and thousands of Jews gathered at the Western Wall specifically to pray for people in China and to pray for God to intervene with this virus. And that just shows that's something special to see thousands, because they'll generally gather for special celebrations, feasts, festivals. But it was just quite special to see thousands and thousands of Jewish people gathered, praying, beseeching God at this holy place, one of the holiest places in Judaism, kind of saying, please God, can you intervene? Because, I mean, the World Health Organization, I think they're on the verge of classifying it as a global pandemic. They may have already even done that. But with this many people, this many illnesses, I know that they built a hospital in 7 days in Wuhan. And at the end of the day, it's suffering. We're seeing people that are suffering, and that will move the heart of God.
Yes.
Definitely will. Now, another thing I just remembered is I've heard this now, I'm not 100%, I need to check this, but I've heard that people are starting to speak in China. They're starting to open their mouths and speak.
Yes.
They're worried. And I did hear an account of warehouses full of bodies.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but if that is true, then now would definitely be the time to pray.
Yes.
Well, there's a video that I saw, and then it was taken down, and that was people wearing coverings with guns and shooting people in the streets.
Yes.
Now, if it's that bad in Wuhan, and they're shooting people like that, this is the most shocking thing. I could not believe it. The screaming, the babies crying, and people being shot.
Yes.
It's just, and it's got to be true because that video was taken down suddenly.
Well, because it is a communist country, they're going to silence the people. China is very concerned with looking strong.
Yes.
And looking good.
And the way they look to the rest of the world. So if they look like they don't have this under control, that's going to take priority to them. And that's what happens in a communist government and society.
That's why we don't want communism or socialism in this country, because we don't want our mouths shut. We want to be able to speak our minds.
Freedom of speech.
And yes.
Even if you don't like what you're hearing, that doesn't mean you agree.
No.
But everybody needs to have the ability to have the freedom of speech, which they do not have there.
No, they don't.
And now,
There's a video that emerged.
Yes,
of that lady.
and I'll get to the video, but I do want to say this, so that we can feel a little bit hopeful, like that we're not all going to get wiped out. Because at the end of the day, we know God is in control, and I did find a prophecy. A couple of you have emailed this to me, but I did already have it. Because as soon as this happened, I started searching China and what my dad had prophesied about China. What did God show my dad about China? And I found from June 12th in 2004. It's not very long, but this is what God showed my dad. He said, my dad prophesied, God is doing a very unique thing in China. You may even wonder why. Don't worry about it. This is a night that will never be forgotten because America is on the verge of a negotiation with China. Now,
Yes.
Trump is with the tariffs and the trade. There is this tension going on, and their economy is suffering because of what is actually unfair trade going on here. So I do agree with Donald Trump in how in being hard and getting that sorted out. That seems to be a great concern for him is the how unfair things are.
And how unfair things have been for years.
For a long time.
Yes.
So it's very interesting because at that time there was no negotiation with China. Now we know there is a negotiation going on with China.
He spoke about that in 2004.
Right. But the way we know the timing of a prophetic word is that God always includes a sign, whether it be something in the weather or some kind. So this to me is a sign that this particular word would have been for now, because we are seeing a negotiation going on with China.
Yes.
And then he went on to say, your prayers are not too small. Your prayers are big, and something unusual, devastating for a short period will happen in China, but a miracle will come out of it for the United States of America. So because I've just found this, I haven't had a lot of time to really try to understand what exactly that would be, what miracle.
Time will tell, Donné.
But that's exactly it. It's the time. And that's so important with prophecy, is the timing.
Yes.
People often will hear a prophecy and then they rush quickly to see it fulfilled, or they start to see it beginning to be fulfilled, and then sort of rush. And there's no rushing God, you know. And I know all of you know that in your own personal lives. And as you go through your life, you say, God, why are you putting me through this? Why isn't it happening yet? You made me a promise. Why am I not seeing it? And that's
This
part of
gives
faith.
you hope.
Well, that's part of
Yes.
faith, is saying, okay, God, I'm giving it to you, and when is part of that as well. And so this, I feel, is a hopeful word, that it is scary right now, and that we are dealing with something that's quite, well, very devastating if you're losing lives. But at the end of the day, some miracle is going to happen. God will bring an answer.
Yes.
And so I wanted to just give you some hope today, and I don't want you going and panicking and being afraid, because that's not what we do, right?
Well, we're Christians. We know where we go when we die. We know our ultimate destiny, our ultimate destination. All of you out there that are Christians know that your destiny is secure when you give your life to Jesus. And if you haven't yet given your heart to the Lord, I hope that you will consider doing it as soon as possible, because we are living in times that are unbelievable, really.
Really. Now, we do have some footage to show you.
Yes.
Okay, so we found a video of a lady in China.
Yes.
And we just wanted you to see this, because another thing that my dad prophesied was about the church underground, the voices underground in Middle Eastern countries and China and a lot of these countries that are oppressed, that the people, especially the youth, but the people will rise up against corrupt leadership. So when we speak about these countries, we're not speaking about the citizens, just the regular people who live there, and judging them. Oftentimes my dad would speak about certain things, would prophesy about certain things that would happen in certain countries, but we're talking about corrupt leadership. And we in America are seeing a huge manifestation of corruption being exposed. I mean, it's just coming out everywhere on both sides of the aisle, no matter where you are. And God truly is draining the swamp and cleaning it out. And I found a prophecy the other day where Dad prophesied about the next president. He didn't name Trump, but he said the next president would cause this to happen without even meaning to do it. Just his presence there would cause it to happen. So for those of you who may not be Trump fans, sometimes God puts certain people in positions not because of their righteousness or their holiness, but because that is the person he chose according to what needs to be done. And God's going to make sure that that gets
just
done.
like in the Old Testament in Daniel, where God chose Cyrus.
Right. Cyrus.
150 years before Cyrus was even born. And to me, that is just miraculous, because God knows the end from the beginning, and he places people into our world, into history. Well, out of history, we can see what he did before history was even made. And that is because God is on the throne. He's the ultimate judge. He's our maker. And it's just awesome.
It is. But we want to show them this video now.
Yes.
So watch this video, and then we'll be right back with you.
因为武汉这个事情，武汉这个瘟疫，都是有计谋、有计划发出来这个瘟疫，牺牲的是我们平民老百姓，我的家人，我的父母在家等死，没有人关心我们平民老百姓的性命，有钱也买不到药，有钱也买不到病房。然后香港同胞，你们独立我支持，台湾独立我也支持，西藏、香港独立都支持，摆脱共产党的邪恶手爪，腐败的政权，邪恶的社会，没有一个人可以自由发声，没有一个人，只有一个人自由发声，就去警察局喝茶、拘留、判刑，法律是他们办的。 们能说判几多年就能判几多年，律师都没有用的，有一个正义的律师都会关起来，他不会为正正而说话，因为他们有邪恶的政权压迫下不能正的说话。我要告诉你们，一个人牺牲，两个人牺牲，革命肯定是有血有肉来牺牲。我想站出来，我暴露出来，我就要站出来，我就要牺牲，为我的父母，为我的家人，为我以后的后代可以自由的生活。我发声，我也很危险，我也知道，但是我已经受不了了，受不了了。没有病床，没有医药， CCTV 讲的那个新闻全部都是假的，全部。他们的吼声，他们的叫声，我看到了。我要发声，我要为我自己发声，我要为我武汉的人民发声，我要为中国同胞发声。就是有养老金，他们想把这个养老金废掉，搞这件事情。这种邪恶的政权，我真的不想再住，真的不想再沉默了。我要发声了，我要疯了。没有一个人可以站出来，我现在站出来了，一定要反抗，一定要反抗啊，同胞们，不能再让他们宰割期呀，再不能再可以这样了，为了下一代站起来，真的是站起来呀。
So as you can tell,
Yes.
that when I saw that, not only did I feel just devastated for the Chinese people that are going through this.
Well, they're poor. They don't have money. See,
Yes, and
they're not
you've been
allowed to buy. They're not allowed to buy the medicine to help them with the flu virus either.
Now,
so
you've been
money
to
is not
China.
even helping.
Obviously,
Yes.
my brothers and sisters, you adopted from China.
Yes.
Now, you were in that little hospital in China there, and you've seen the conditions
Yes,
and what it's like in China.
The conditions of regular people in the street is really shocking. I mean, I went with little Kimberlyn to get an x-ray, and they just plonk you on the table and take the x-ray. There's no covering you up or anything like that. There's no...
There's a sharing of the bed. It's one of them.
And children are put in beds together.
Because they don't have space.
Yes, it's really, really not as it's portrayed by the Chinese. It's all about the way that that they are perceived. They want to be looking good, and but the regular little people in the street,
suffering.
they're not cared for.
Yes. And so the other thing that I noticed while watching that is how many parallels. Now in China, under the Communist Party, they're to the extreme, but you're seeing the budding of that here in America. And so especially with the presidential elections coming up, and I know this is touchy, but I have to be honest, I do not agree with a socialist agenda for the United States of America. It goes against everything that this nation was founded on.
Yes.
Freedom of speech. She has no freedom of speech. She's risking her life. That woman you just watched is risking her life by sharing that video. Yes. And she is exposing exactly what can happen if you allow the government to control, and they sell it to you in a way like, we're going to give you free medical, we're going to give you free education, we're going to legalize everything, everything's going to be great and you're not going to have to do anything. But then what happens then is that you are now owned by the government. If they feed you and house you and educate you and give you everything, they own you. And then no longer do you have a voice. Then no longer is there freedom of speech. And that is my concern. This is not about petty politics or who do I like or what did they do wrong or right. The bottom line is this is your choice right now. And this is what I see as being, and you can get angry with me if you want to, if you don't like Trump, okay? But the alternative is a road to a life like that.
The thing is
Yes.
And it's not being compassionate for people in need here. That is
against what
our
God
responsibility as the church. It is our responsibility to be the hands and feet of Jesus. It is our responsibility to do that, not the government. And we do it voluntarily, not because we're required to pay a tax, but because we choose to give. We choose to give to those in need. And it is and that is where I feel the church is lacking. We're so distracted, and we are so busy judging each other and going on about petty things. When the bottom line, and this is what Dad said on the last broadcast, he said, the basics of apostolic Christianity, that is what we need to be looking at, and not worrying about petty arguments, because we are responsible to represent Christ and to help people. Okay, and so my heart right now even feels that our missions, we have missions all over the world, that I really would like to start to direct some missions toward the United States of America, because we have a homelessness crisis, we have drug problems, we have all kinds of things going on here. Yes. And you have a rise in what is being sold to you. If you look at Venezuela, when it started, they were selling it to Venezuela as, oh, you're going to get this and it's all going to be, Venezuela was one of the wealthiest countries in the world 20 years ago.
The problem is that when there's a surge in the population, there's no money to pay for everything for everybody.
And
there's
so their
just not
answer
enough
is abortion.
money.
Just kill the babies.
But also...
And I don't like that either. That upsets me.
But also...
Tremendous.
The socialist sort of messages, it'll be free. But somebody has to pay for it.
Yes.
And so their answer is to insanely tax people that are making money, which then causes them to leave that country to go find their work somewhere else so that they don't have to pay the taxes.
And also the people who make a lot of money. Look, there's lots of corrupt rich people.
There's
lots of corrupt poor people as well. Good and evil runs through the heart of every man and woman. And so your choices that you make don't blanket everybody. So if somebody works hard, makes a living, makes a life for themselves, and is giving jobs to people, that's not bad. I'm not saying that there isn't corruption. There is, but we can discern that.
But the problem, I think, is that the core philosophy is based on a lie.
It is,
because one of my best friends moved to Canada, and she's got a great job there. Obviously, the situation in South Africa is very difficult at the moment. You guys know a lot of our families don't have jobs, and people are really struggling. One of my best friends out there, some of them are really struggling literally to pay their rent because prices are just insane. But in Canada, free healthcare, it sounds awesome, but the reality is, unless it's an emergency, you can easily get put on a waiting list that'll take a month for you to get in to see a specialist.
That's right.
And so it sounds fantastic in theory, but in reality, there are a whole lot of issues that don't get brought up. And I think...
And the number one is you have to be wait for an appointment, which could take 6 months, and you could be dead by then.
Let me tell you a personal experience I had when Dad sent me to Europe in 2012. I spent a lot of time with local people in different countries, and England was one of them. Now, they had socialized medicine at the time, and we met someone who was an anesthesiologist, and he ended up quitting because he couldn't survive financially. Now, any anesthesiologist in the United States of America knows you're probably well off because you're paid well, because it's a very risky job. And he was explaining how you would have to be on waiting lists for months I think he had needed a knee surgery, and he had to wait for months till it got worse and worse and worse, to where the situation was so much worse. And many, many people in England that we met were complaining about this very problem, that they didn't have, it wasn't a functional system. It's almost like if you think about going to the DMV, and everybody watching me, you've been there. Imagine everything in America being like the DMV, because that is what would happen. Okay? Yes. So one thing I do respect about Bernie Sanders is that he's at least being honest. He's honest about what he's doing. Many of the other candidates plan to do the exact same thing on that side. They're just not being honest about it. And I think there's a few of them that are torn, that can see the dangers in it. And I can see that's why you have such a split in the Democratic Party.
You should have been a politician. You
really don't want
this is
that
laugh. Okay, carry on.
But these are the dangers that I'm seeing, and a lot of it I actually didn't plan to talk about today, but it's coming to me, so I'm just going to say it. I see that there is such a split in the Democratic Party, and look, I'm not judging people who are Democrats. There are many, many good people who look. If you look at the two parties, okay. Here's the list of problems and issues and things we want to do.
And we're talking about this today because it affects you and it affects, it's all about Christianity actually, because
it does
God shows us in His Word how we should be living. He's given us the plan. It's there in the Bible. And it is very biblical to be speaking about this right now.
Well, one problem is that people aren't speaking to each other. And they're so divided. And if you look if you just think about it basically, okay? You've got political parties. What are they there to do, okay? You have a list of problems and a list of things that we need to get done. This side has a list of solutions that they think are going to work, and that side has a list of solutions that they think are going to work. It doesn't mean we have to be mortal enemies and hate each other and not be able to sit down to dinner together because we have different ideas of solutions. Now, I think that the reason that you're seeing the rise in the conservative voice and actually a bit of backbone and fighting back right now is because the danger is so grave.
Yes.
Is that the moving so far to the left it's not balanced.
But the root of
there has to be a balance.
But the root of the moving so far to the left is spiritual.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Because the agenda is clear.
Yes.
So it's the same concept because I'm always all about Israel.
Yes.
People go, oh, you just hate Muslims. No, I don't. Actually, one of my really, really good friends is a Muslim woman, and she was actually my daughter's pediatrician, and we get on super well, and we agree on just about everything except for Israel. We
and
get
again,
on really
this
well.
is not about the citizens. This is about corrupt leadership and spirits that hover over these people and oppress them.
And so when you look at the fruit, because the Bible tells us that you will know a tree by its fruit. So you're going to know what the root is feeding that tree by the fruit that's on that tree. And so when you look at the fruit on the tree of on the radical left, is that you're seeing these agendas pushed, like allowing children to choose their own gender when they're 3 years old, and at that age they get angry that water is wet.
I know.
But they're allowed to choose their own gender. But they're mad at you that the water is wet. But you can choose to be whatever you want. And you're seeing, advocacy for late-term abortions.
Yes. That to me is just, I don't understand.
And it's unbelievable.
If you carry the child, just give it to someone who can't have children.
And again, people get into all kinds of different arguments about that. And President Trump himself is probably seen as more a liberal conservative, because of his stance on some of those issues. But I'm talking about the radicals, because this is something my mother always speaks about. She says because of her life and where she came out of, my mom has a very crazy story, but because she was so heavily involved in the occult, she says once you've been at the center of something, you understand why the fringe is so dangerous. Because when you've been at the center of it and you see what it is. Because she was
Say that again. When you've been at the center of something,
you understand the danger of the fringe.
Because the fringe don't really know what the center knows.
But it's linked to the center.
Yes.
And so that's why, with me growing up, my mom was really intense about making sure I had nothing to do with anything vaguely occultic. And I got mocked for it my whole life. I was never allowed to watch a single show with anything that had a witch, that had anything, and I was the only kid sometimes that had to get up and walk out because I knew my mother firstly she would beat me. I'm kidding, not really. No, she taught me like, hey, you need to make these choices, but it's because she's still to this day, as a grandmother now and not running a church anymore, she's got such an intense conviction because she's been at the center of occultism and it nearly killed her. And so she understands how dangerous those things that seem safe, that are actually the fringe. Yes. It's the same thing here. Freedom of speech is important. A lot of these things are important and some of the policies are fine. But when you look at the center, the roots of what the radicals on the left believe, and when you look at the fruit of that tree, it is very clear to see that there is a demonic influence in a lot of it.
Definitely.
And it's definitely not what God would want.
No.
And we can disagree with one another. Of course, nobody's ever going to agree about everything. No. I mean, you just look at eschatology, there's 7 main viewpoints.
Yes.
You know, if you look at anything, there's going to be division. It's how we handle each other. And isn't that part of the spiritual life?
Yes. And nobody has got it all together.
Nobody's got it all together.
But if we all got together,
Yes.
we'd
If we were
figure
to
out
be
what
able
the
to
truth was.
communicate,
Yes.
we can find the
But
answers
even
together
the
and
rage
the
is
balance.
spiritual. Even
Yes,
the rage is spiritual. And so I just want to make a note, you know, maybe instead of us even looking at Facebook and getting angry and fighting, maybe we should pray.
It's exactly what
You know,
we
and
need
I'm
to
not saying lock yourself up in the cupboard and say, well, I'm now living in this cupboard and I'm not going to look at anything and do anything. I'm just living in this cupboard. Don't do that. But maybe don't get involved in like a firefight on Facebook, because that doesn't normally accomplish very much. You don't really change anybody's mind. But instead, maybe we could look and say, hey, God, I'm really asking you to just touch every single one of these people and to bring your truth and your enlightenment, because at the end of the day, only the Holy Spirit can work on someone's heart. And that's what we need, is we need a turning of the hearts.
We do. We need that.
2 Chronicles says it. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, I will hear from
Read that
heaven
this
and
morning.
heal
But
their
you also
land.
have to turn from your wicked ways.
Exactly. There has to be a
That's the
heart
crucial part,
turn.
you see.
Yes,
That's part of the repentance, is an acknowledgement that there needs to be a turn, but no amount of fighting is going to do that. That's something we have to trust God to do. Of course, not saying again, hide in the cupboard, don't ever talk. No, conservatives need a voice. We need to go out there. There's actually a gay Trump supporter activist that I love. His name is Scott Presler.
Oh, I know exactly.
And he goes out and cleans up cities.
I know.
That are run by Democrats, wearing his Make America Great Again hat, and he picks up syringes and cleans things out. And he speaks about how important it is to dialogue with one another and talk to one another while being active and cleaning up. Now that might look, people are confused by that. What do you mean he's the 6'6" gay Trump supporter with hair down to his knees, cleaning up cities? But that, for me, I look at that and go, do you know what? There's something there where he's advocating for connection and understanding and dialogue. And that's something that should be there, I think, especially in the church.
Well, the problem with the church is the first thing that they're going to do is say, well, he's gay, so he's out.
And also people play the God card. Well, God told me this, and okay, cool.
Look, when we're talking about getting onto this gay subject, I get a little bit worried. Okay?
I'm not saying, I don't want to bring that up. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying,
The Bible is very clear about that
Of course.
subject.
Look, we understand that, but the point I'm trying to make is God's using him, even though he's gay.
And you know what
Doesn't
God
make
does?
being
God
gay right.
forgives
It
your
means-
sin
Yeah.
Yes.
if you are trying to overcome that.
Yes.
And I wasn't trying to bring that up as a thing. I was just saying he's a Trump supporter, and he, being part of the gay community, has been beaten up by other gay people who are angry that he supports Trump. So my point is that even the radical left, they will fight somebody who's like openly LGBTQRST whatever, because
WXYZ.
you know, all of the letters, they're all the letters, and you know, they're actually in love with a unicorn named Fran. I don't know. The point is that even the radical left will fight somebody like that, and he's literally been physically assaulted because he supports Trump. That is what tells me that there's a spirit at work here, because somebody that in another sense would be celebrated is being attacked because of Trump. And I think we're seeing a similar thing with Christians.
Oh, yes. Orange man bad, and that's all they see.
Yes.
And that's a problem.
What
and
is that?
It's
People
just
my age don't even know what that is.
No, that they do. It's just this it's kind of like, oh, you drank the Kool-Aid. Orange man bad. Orange man is Trump, because, you know, he spray paints himself and he looks a bit orange.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Basically the mentality is no matter what he does, he's bad. And we must hate him and we must get rid of him. So nobody wants to actually look at the policies and what he's actually been doing. Everyone just wants to hear, oh, well, he said this and it made me mad, or he's sinned in his life, and so how could he be the one that God uses? God can use whoever he wants. He can use a donkey if he wants to. And the problem is that I think as Christians, we need to step up and start doing some stuff. And maybe God's trying to open our eyes a little bit.
Yes, God is definitely.
We should be looking at ourselves before we're judging others, essentially.
I feel like Donné is having all these moments in this podcast.
I am. You know what? I've just been, it's just all coming out.
And then I just want to bring this up quickly because it's happening in the next 2 weeks. The Israeli election is happening in the next 2 weeks.
This is extremely important.
This is extremely important.
March 2nd.
March 2nd
is the election.
Is the election. It's the third one in the Jewish calendar year. It's unprecedented, the third time. And The Israeli political system is about as different to the American political system as you can get. Even with what we've been talking about, there's Republican, there's Democrat, then there's, the way that it works, and everybody knows how it is in America. But in Israel, it's very different. It's a much smaller country, of course, there's 42 political parties. And the way that it works, it is a very strange system. Doobie has given a really great explanation on it. But at the end of the day, what it's boiling down to is this. This election really is going to come down to Benjamin Netanyahu versus Benny Gantz.
Yes.
That is what this election is going to come down to.
And I am watching this very closely because of Bible prophecy and what we are expecting to happen in the next 5-10 years. We don't know. I'm hoping that we'll be raptured out of here before this happens. And I'm not joking.
No.
I'm very serious about it because of Bible prophecy, we've been able to first of all, there's this parable about the budding of the fig tree.
Yes.
Okay, and it's just, you can see around you what's going on in the world. And Jesus told us it would happen. He told us so many things about what would happen in the end times. We can see the coronavirus. This is becoming a pandemic. Earthquakes have been escalating since 1948. The amount of earthquakes happening in the world today are actually, if you go back and research it, you'll see that there's so many more earthquakes than there ever were before. So the earth is groaning and moaning right now.
It's labor pains.
It is the labor pains. And of course, we're watching the peace treaty because this is what Daniel spoke about. And I personally believe that this peace treaty is the beginnings of the peace treaty that Daniel was talking about. I have no doubt in my mind about that. And we know that because of the parable about the fig tree budding, it's obvious to us. It's as obvious to a gardener when he sees that the fig tree is budding. He knows what's coming next. It's going to go from spring to autumn to summer. So you know the season that you're in. The season that we're living in right now is conducive to exactly what the Bible speaks about the end times. So we're watching Benjamin Netanyahu, we're watching Benny Gantz, and I mean, who knows? Benny Gantz is very trigger happy. He could tell them to set off the atomic warfare against Damascus, and that would be
that would be prophecy.
Isaiah 17 coming to pass.
Well, I would say that as we see these things happen, and watch, because that's what we're doing right now. We're watching and we're paying attention. If certain events transpire, it's going to be a sign to us that, okay, this is the season we're in, or this is where we are. And if they don't, but maybe they're going to, maybe this is the groundwork for something that's coming.
Yes.
It could be that as well.
Yeah, I'm getting all worked up.
Well, we were all getting worked up today.
That being said, I think that, we're going to focus a lot that week of the election. Pretty much all the broadcasts are going to be about that. Last year in 2019, the first round of elections, I kind of tagged an eye on the election, and I did not know how many eyes would be happening on how many elections. But here we are.
How many is this now? The third?
This is the third one, which has never happened before. But what it's coming down to is kind of Benjamin Netanyahu, Benny Gantz, because of your dad's prophecy about Benjamin Netanyahu, where he said, I will take Netanyahu whether ruler or not, because he is a prophet. And so that kind of gives me a peace in a way where even if he doesn't come out on top of this election, I know God's still going to use him. And
that was prophesied before, way before.
Yes,
so
it was. And the thing is, we've seen so many historical prophetic things happen with Benjamin Netanyahu at the reins, between him and Donald Trump. They've got a great relationship. The things that have transpired between America and Israel in this time, in the last 2 years, we've seen have been prophetic. They've been historic.
Exactly
So-
as my father prophesied and
Yes.
saw as well.
And we know God's got his hand on Israel. And so my encouragement to you is just to keep watching. We're definitely going to focus that whole week on Israel, waiting for results, looking to see what happens, doing analysis of the situation. The one thing that we do know is that the peace plan that was proposed, President Trump met with Benny Gantz and Benjamin Netanyahu, and both of them agreed to it, which is a very big deal. So whether or not this is the peace treaty or if it's the beginning of the peace treaty as
It's
prophesied
the beginning
in Daniel
of the
9:27.
peace treaty.
Yes.
And so in Daniel, it speaks about the Antichrist will confirm the covenant. In other words, make it better, like I told
Yes.
you on the other current events
Yes.
program.
So it's the thing is, the fact that this has happened, the fact that this many Arab nations have even been prepared to talk to America about it.
It's a big deal.
It's a very big deal, and people freak out about it and the land and dividing the land, and that's a whole other thing. I personally, I know we both really like Amir Tsafati's take on it. He's very balanced. He's got a
Amir
great.
Tsafati
Love
is
him. He's
very,
fantastic.
very balanced.
And he's super intelligent and knows
he's
what's
a-
going
he's-
on.
You
he's a
guys
Jew
should listen.
from
You should watch
he's
him.
a Jew from the tribe of
How can people
Judah.
watch him?
BeholdIsrael.org.
Behold Israel.
He's really
BeholdIsrael.org.
great.
Check
He
it out.
does a lot, he does really kind of lengthy analyses on different things, which is great because, to stay informed. But I kind of am always watching all of these things. But at the end of the day, we know that God is in control, and what we're praying for and trusting God for is the safety of Israel during this electoral time. Over the other two elections that have happened, the Palestinians have used this as a time to be intensely trigger happy because they know that when it's election time, the IDF is generally going to be a little bit more withheld and a little bit more like tame in their response to anything. And one of the worst things that's come out of the Palestinian areas in the last year have been incendiary balloons. They get these really beautiful, big, colorful bunches of balloons that any child would love, and they attach bombs to them, and they're floating them over into Israel. And a couple of kids have been injured. Thank God none have actually been killed. But we need to just be praying and trusting God for protection of all of Israel's people, Arab and Jew, trusting God for his protection as we lead up to this time. And we're going to be posting a lot about that on the Israel Facebook page. I'm always posting stuff about there, on there. And then also that week, just so you know, that first week of March, all the broadcasts and everything are going to be really focused on the Israeli election.
So that's what you can be watching for, especially on the next current events. Be watching for what's happening in Israel. We will be speaking about it, and we want you to join us every time we have a current events broadcast. So stay tuned and be watching our emails and updates so that you can be informed of when we're going to be doing it.
And if you'd like to send questions in, you can email us on currentevents@houseofdestiny.org. If there's stuff you'd like us to talk about, or there's specific things you'd like to know.
And even if you're mad with us today because of some of the things that we've said, email us because
If you
we want
get
to hear
mad at
from
me,
you.
please email me because it's okay. I don't mind. I told the truth and how I feel, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'm okay with being wrong too. And I think that all of us, if we had that attitude,
At
we might
least
actually
we're
get
free to speak, and you are free to speak
That
as
is a
well.
gift.
So this is because of the United States of America and because of the founders of this nation that gave their lives and for us, and we're so grateful because God was in those founders' hearts, and they made quality decisions to manage our country, and they were godly men. So this has everything to do with God, the Bible, and also our daily lives that we live. So be watching for the next current events.
Thank you for watching the House of Destiny's YouTube channel. Please subscribe to get all of our latest content. This video was brought to you by all of our generous supporters. If you'd like to give, click the link in the description. We have new episodes every week, so stay tuned. And remember, you're somewhere in the future and you look much better than you look right now.